Welcome to Fandom Beat. It's time for another Behind Anime Lines, and today I'm joined by Shannon Morse to talk about Sailor Moon Crystal. Shannon is the foremost Sailor Moon fan that I have probably ever met, so I think there is no better guest to talk about this.
Yes!
Yeah, you want to get right into it?
Let's talk about some Sailor Moon.
Let's talk about...
y'all!
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. So, Shannon, you are the biggest Sailor Moon fan I've ever met, and I can think of 3 or 4 girls off the top of my head who would kill me if they heard me say that, but it's absolutely true, I think. You've got every one of the mangas in Japanese or something?
In Japanese, English, and I have 2 versions of each.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is phenomenal. So I have to imagine that you were pretty excited by Sailor Moon Crystal being an announced thing this year, right?
I literally cried.
Yeah?
when I heard about it. No, I watched the trailer. I watched it on, I believe it was Hulu or YouTube or wherever it first released that first day. And I think I watched it about 10 times that day, and I was jumping up and down, I was crying, I was just like, oh my god, and I texted my husband, I was like, there's Sailor Moon Crystal coming out, I'm so excited. So yes, slightly.
It's funny, because seeing the reaction from the announcement that the show existed, like on Tumblr and Twitter and places, there was a lot of excitement, but then I remember that first trailer came out, and a lot of people felt uncertain about the art style.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on that as a known Sailor Moon liker. I guess it resembles the manga more, is that right?
It does, yeah. It definitely resembles the manga. Everything from Sailor Moon's, her facial expressions and how she's drawn to the costumes. Like a tuxedo mask, Tuxedo Kamen, his complete tuxedo looks exactly like it does in the manga. And personally, I like it, but a lot of people thought that when they're running around and whenever they have fight scenes, they look a little flimsy because they have really long, skinny legs.
Sure.
They don't look like the original anime. And I think that's what the artists are trying to go for. They're trying to make it look more like the manga, and they're trying to base the entire storyline on the manga as opposed to the original anime, because that's the original storyline, is the manga.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people, especially here in the United States, who their only exposure to Sailor Moon was watching it on TV growing up. That was kind of a lot of people, I think myself included.
So they probably got a little mad.
Yeah.
I liked it though. I liked how they defined the eyes a lot more in this new Crystal version.
For sure.
Where like instead of just having 2 shades of blue on Sailor Moon's eyes, you have like 5 shades, and they kind of turn this ombre color from light to dark, and it's beautiful. Like I had to pause on it and just be like, wow, I love how they drew it.
Yeah, I think one thing that really stands out to me about the show is that it doesn't look like it's from today. It actually looks like it's like 20 years old, you know what I mean?
Oh, it totally does.
It's fascinating to me that they managed to kind of nail, like stylistically, making it look like a show from another time. This looks like a long-lost Sailor Moon manga adaptation that we never saw.
But doesn't it feel like to you that it could last forever? Just the way that it's drawn and implemented in today's version?
I think so. I think the one caveat I would put on that is that the CGI transformation sequences are kind of where because initially, like, I had a lot of emotions just watching, like, during the course of that 30-second sequence, because for the first half of it, I was like, oh my god, this looks incredible. They really imitated the art style. And then as she started being less of a silhouette and more of Usagi, I was like, that looks like a video game. Like, that looks like a CGI version of her.
It did. It's kind of like Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, for sure.
Type of models.
Anime Uncanny Valley.
So it was a little weird. The first time I watched through the episode, I didn't mind the transformation sequence that much, but the second time I was like, wow, there's a whole lot of sound effects going on, and she's got a lot more moves in this transformation than she usually does, and I'm not too sure about that Uncanny Valley camera or computer effect, so it was okay.
Yeah, and I think, and I defer to your expertise because you know way, way, way more about Sailor Moon than me, but as someone who only experienced it through the original show and then now today rewatching the remastered stuff, I feel like I just have in my head this idea of who Usagi is, and she's like this super clumsy, goofy, like gluttonous, tired girl, and she's extremely expressive in the original Sailor Moon, and part of me watches Crystal and wonders if that's missing. Like the new Usagi kind of always has a eyes open, perpetual gasp,
she
almost
looks dreamy.
Yeah, and a little blow up dolly. Actually, she just like she kind of just has one emotion, and I don't know. Is that something that maybe that only bothers me as someone who's only experienced Sailor Moon in one tiny encapsulated way? But you're happy with the new Usagi because. Do you feel like her personality is
I think you're being a little bit nitpicky.
Okay, I mean, do you think her personality is on target with like what you think of as the character?
For me, after reading the mangas, yes, I do. She still has the clumsiness that we've gotten from the storyline, from Naoko's original plotline, and Naoko's the original author of the story. So I feel like that is Usagi, but it's toned down a lot more in the new Crystal version. And she's a lot more beautiful, and she feels like it looks like she's a lot more elegant. So I can understand why a lot of people would be like, she's not clumsy enough, or she doesn't eat enough. Like, she still does those things, but it's toned down.
For sure. I mean, like, it's still, after that opening sequence, it still starts with that classic, like, she wakes up and she's late for school and she like trips and just falls all the way down the stairs.
I love that scene. That's not in the original anime. The falling down the stairs, so funny.
It's a good addition, for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're one episode in, so I feel like it's maybe early to make any wide sort of statements about Sailor Moon Crystal, but I mean, I guess obviously you're going to keep watching it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was a little sad this weekend when I found out that it was only every other weekend
They're
that's going to be airing.
A bi-weekly release schedule. I guess the next one is like, the next episode is July 19th or something.
I don't want to wait another week.
Yeah.
Give me it now.
I also, just to talk about the visuals again, there are points where the animation, and this is maybe also nitpicky, but the animation sometimes looks a little cheap in spots, or just like, there aren't a ton of frames of animation, things look a little janky, some of the eyes look weird.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the way the anime industry works at all, so that's big asterisk on this.
I don't either.
It just seems to me like Sailor Moon is so important and so pivotal. It's hard for me to understand why they wouldn't have just an infinite budget to do the most elaborate, over-the-top animation ever, instead of these things that look maybe a little, to me, corner cutty or the CG stuff. Like, why does this not look like the most expensive show ever made? Like, Sailor Moon deserves that treatment, I feel like.
I agree, it does deserve that treatment. I know the original anime, most of it was hand-drawn, and they didn't have a huge budget, so they only had like a certain amount of artists per day that would come into their office and draw every single bit. So there's still original cells that you can like buy on eBay and stuff like that. So they would reuse a lot of different designs and a lot of pictures and things like that, a lot of the watercoloring for the backgrounds. In the new one, I figured they would have a ton of money. I mean, this is being distributed worldwide, so why not? Like, put all your money into this because you know it's going to be awesome. So maybe they're just waiting to see how it goes. Maybe they cut the budget for the first season and they'll make it bigger for the second, which hasn't been announced yet, but I hope it does.
Right. I guess there is a little bit of risk there. I mean, Sailor Moon feels like a sure bet to me, but I also know that they haven't done an animated Sailor Moon series in so long that maybe they are kind of toeing in gently. So let's talk about the sort of narrative differences, because this doesn't line up perfectly with the original Sailor Moon series or with the manga, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a lot closer to the manga version than the original anime. You'll see a lot of pivotal differences. Like at the very beginning, there's a dream sequence where you see Princess Serenity, who's the Moon Princess, which turns out later on, spoiler, turns out to be Usagi, or Sailor Moon. We don't know this yet in the anime, and it's never mentioned in the first episode of the original anime. It's just mentioned in Crystal, where she actually has this dream. And then later on, you see Tuxedo Mask, and he's dressed exactly like he does in his Tuxedo Mask outfit. Like Mamoru is dressed that way. It's kind of weird.
The interesting thing about that dream sequence to me is that it almost feels like maybe a tacit acknowledgement of the fact that most of the people watching this know the story of Sailor Moon. And it's like, it's almost spoiler proof at this point because everyone knows everything that happens and has for like 20 years. So I guess why not throw those little hints in that make the fans happy? And there are also tons of little differences, like the fact that Tuxedo Mask doesn't throw like the roses.
Oh, that's true. I kind of missed that.
Yeah, I think I do too.
I love his roses.
There are a lot of things that are just burned into my head.
That's so important when you go to anime conventions.
Totally. But he does have the full like white eyes and.
Yeah, he still has the mask, and her outfit is a lot more like the manga version. Even her attacks are a little bit different. They're a lot more similar to the manga version as opposed to the original anime. Luna, I like her voice actor in this version.
Yeah, I actually like the way
the original.
I think Luna looks really great in this version
looks
too. Like this is my favorite depiction of Luna ever.
I have a little black cat at home, and I named her Luna because she looks exactly like Luna from the manga.
I think
she's so cute.
You might not be the only person I know who named their cat Luna.
I mean, you have to if you're a Sailor Moon fan.
Right, it's like having a corgi and not naming it Ein, I guess, if you're an anime fan.
Another thing I noticed about the new Crystal anime is that it seems to be going a lot faster.
Yeah.
Like you have that dream sequence and you have, all the action packs stuff going on in the first episode, but at the very end you see Amy Mizuno, who is
Right.
Sailor Mercury. That doesn't happen in the original anime until like the 5th episode. So it feels like they're trying to pack everything in really fast to get to the really good plot line with like Queen Beryl, the
Right.
enemy, and Jedi and everything like that.
And even on a smaller scale, like the scene where she goes in the arcade from episode 2 of the
Oh,
original
yeah.
animated series is in this first episode of Crystal, and it almost feels like, whereas in the original Sailor Moon there are these discrete, isolated, very episodic episodes
Yes.
that have standalone stories. It almost feels like they're trying to blend this together into more of a like linear narrative that isn't so siloed, I guess. That's what it feels
That's
like.
true.
But we're also one episode in, and like, who knows where this is going to go.
It's so exciting.
It is. It's cool to like have an excuse to talk about Sailor Moon again. And even like this early on, as someone who feels like I prefer the original animated series, the cool thing about it being 2014 is that Sailor Moon Crystal exists, and there's the whole Sailor Moon remastered thing that's airing right
absolutely.
now. So like you can watch either one. Like
It's
everybody
so
wins.
exciting.
Um,
I love somebody on YouTube already put like a comparison of the 2 episodes side by side.
Yeah.
So you can see the differences with the transformation and everything.
Wow.
And it is so cool just seeing everything that's happened between, the 1990s version of the
Mm-hmm.
anime and Crystal from 2014.
Something that I think is
So
really
weird.
impressive in media that is meant to be nostalgic, like this happens a lot in video game remakes. Something that's really impressive to me is when they don't, they aren't just remaking the thing identically. Like,
Yeah.
there's a couple of like a remake of Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker and Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time
Oh, right.
came out in the past couple of years, and what those managed to do is they didn't look way, way, way better. They just looked the way you remembered them, which is actually a huge feat. Like, we all have these rose-tinted glasses when it comes to stuff like Sailor Moon and stuff like the old Zelda games, and to make games not look the way they did, but to make them look the way we imagined they did when we were like
Yes.
enjoying them back in the day is a huge accomplishment. And I think Crystal does that fantastically, right down to like even the palette, like the colors they choose feel
Oh, yeah.
decidedly of
They're
another
totally
time.
similar, but there's just these little teeny tiny differences that you see
Yeah.
in the characters.
It seems like a worthwhile thing that they've made, and I'm excited to see what other changes there are and how they mix up the plot. And I'm
Me
also,
too.
it's inspired me to keep watching Sailor Moon Remastered, which I think is just
Yay!
like, ugh, it's better than I remember it. That's a great show.
We can have
Like,
watch-alongs!
We can,
Woo!
exactly. So that's what we thought of Sailor Moon Crystal. Let us know what you thought in the comments below, and we'll be down there hanging out with you as usual and talking to you about the show. The second episode is coming up, this weekend, this Saturday?
Yes, this weekend.
So that's
excited.
pretty exciting. And if you want to watch Sailor Moon Crystal for yourself in 1080p with no ads, there is no better place to do that than on Crunchyroll.com. The cool thing about Crunchyroll is that by watching shows on there, you're supporting the anime industry as Crunchyroll shares their revenue with the actual show's creators, so it's the best way to watch the shows you want and support the medium you love at the same time. Crunchyroll also has apps on iOS, Xbox, PlayStation, the Vita, just everything you could ever imagine, so there's no excuse not to get it. Sign up at Crunchyroll.com/fandombeat for a 14-day free trial and watch all these shows ad-free in 1080p at your leisure.